The cold, unforgiving vastness of the North Atlantic held secrets, whispered on the frigid winds and concealed beneath the churning gray waves. In the spring of 1941, one such secret, steel-clad and bristling with immense power, was on the move. It was a shadow in the depths, a rumor of colossal might that sent shivers down the spines of Allied strategists. This was the German battleship Bismarck, a vessel so formidable, so perfectly engineered for destruction that her very existence cast a pall over Britain's maritime lifeline. Her emergence from the labyrinthine fjords of Norway, slipping silently into the operational theater, was not just a military maneuver, it was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down with an arrogance born of superior engineering and audacious planning. The war at sea was, at this juncture, a battle of attrition, a relentless grind where convoys were stalked by U-boats and merchantmen vanished without a trace into the ocean's maw. But Bismarck was different. She was a surface raider of unprecedented scale, designed not for stealth, but for overwhelming force, for the swift, decisive annihilation of anything that dared to stand in her way. Her mission, codenamed Operation Rheinübung, was simple in its objective, yet cataclysmic in its potential impact: to unleash havoc upon the transatlantic shipping lanes, severing the vital umbilical cord that fed Britain with food, fuel, and munitions from the Americas. If Bismarck succeeded, the British Isles, already reeling from the relentless air raids of the Blitz, could be starved into submission. The stakes, therefore, could not have been higher. From the moment her keel was laid in the Blohm & Voss shipyard in Hamburg, the battleship Bismarck was destined to be more than just a warship. She was a symbol. A colossal embodiment of Germany's resurgent naval ambition, stretching over 800 feet in length, her 9-inch armored belt a testament to her designer's commitment to invulnerability, she was truly a floating fortress. Her 8 15-inch guns, housed in 4 mighty twin turrets, could hurl armor-piercing shells across 20 miles of ocean with devastating precision. The sheer scale of her construction, the deafening clang of steel on steel, the meticulous engineering, all spoke of a nation rebuilding its military might in defiance of past treaties and current adversaries. Her engines, capable of driving her through the water at an astonishing 30 knots, promised a predator of unparalleled speed and destructive potential, designed to wreak havoc on Allied shipping lanes and challenge British naval supremacy. She was less a ship and more a statement, a tangible challenge etched in steel and fire, her very existence a provocative roar across the volatile seas of a world at war. Accompanying Bismarck on this perilous voyage was the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen, a sleek and swift hunter in her own right, armed with 8 8-inch guns and capable of matching Bismarck's formidable speed. Together, they formed a formidable battle group, a vanguard of the German surface fleet poised to strike a devastating blow against the Allied war effort. Their journey began in the calm waters of the Baltic, a deceptive prelude to the storm that awaited them. As they threaded their way through the Danish Straits, their sheer size and distinctive profiles did not go unnoticed. Neutral Swedish intelligence, ever vigilant, passed on a sighting report to the British Admiralty, confirming the gravest fears of naval command. The beast was loose. British intelligence, a finely tuned network of agents, codebreakers, and reconnaissance aircraft, had been anticipating such a move. The Royal Navy, guardians of the Empire's lifelines, knew the threat Bismarck posed. Their primary concern was to prevent her from breaking out into the vast expanse of the Atlantic, where she could disappear among the waves and hunt convoys with impunity. The North Sea, with its narrow passages and treacherous currents, became a grand chessboard upon which the fates of nations would be decided. Reconnaissance flights, braving perilous weather and a threat of anti-aircraft fire, scoured the Norwegian coast, their crews peering through binoculars and cameras, searching for any sign of the German behemoths. On May 21, 1941, an RAF Spitfire, its pilot pushing the limits of his fuel and endurance, captured the definitive proof. There, nestled in a fjord near Bergen, were the unmistakable silhouettes of Bismarck and Prince Eugen. The photographic evidence was damning, irrefutable. The chase was on. The intelligence flowed directly to the Admiralty, sparking a flurry of urgent orders and strategic deployments. Admirals across the Atlantic received their marching orders. The pride of the Royal Navy, its most formidable warships, were to converge and intercept. This was not merely a battle, it was a desperate race against time, a colossal hunt for the predator before it could inflict irreparable damage. The air crackled with tension. The fate of convoys, indeed, the fate of a nation, hung in the balance. The British response was immediate and overwhelming. Admiral Sir John Tovey, commander of the home fleet, already had his ships poised, anticipating the German breakout. His flagship, HMS King George V, a brand new battleship, powerful and modern but still untested in true combat, led the charge. Alongside her was the battlecruiser HMS Repulse, a veteran of earlier wars, swift but vulnerable. Cruisers were dispatched to patrol the key choke points, their radars sweeping the horizon for any hint of the enemy. But the most significant response came from Scapa Flow, the legendary naval base in the Orkney Islands, a bastion of British naval power. From there, a formidable force was unleashed. HMS Hood, the pride of the Royal Navy, the largest warship in the world for over 2 decades, and the equally new, still working out the kinks battleship, HMS Prince of Wales. HMS Hood was more than just a ship. She was an icon, a symbol of British naval might and imperial grandeur. Launched in 1918, she embodied the very spirit of the Royal Navy. Her sleek lines, powerful main battery of 8 15-inch guns, and impressive speed of 32 knots had earned her the affectionate moniker Mighty Hood. For 2 decades, she had been a global ambassador, a flag-waving testament to Britain's dominion over the seas. Her decks had hosted royalty, her guns had trained in countless exercises, and her crew had been meticulously honed into a formidable fighting unit. Yet, beneath her majestic exterior lay a critical vulnerability. Designed during the First World War, her deck armor was woefully inadequate against the plunging fire of modern naval guns, a fatal flaw that would, unbeknownst to her crew, be cruelly exploited in the frigid waters of the Denmark Strait. Accompanying Hood was HMS Prince of Wales, a King George V class battleship, only recently commissioned. She was a technological marvel, boasting 10 14-inch guns and a vastly improved armor scheme compared to the Hood. However, her journey from the shipyard had been rushed. Civilians were still working on her, adjusting equipment and rectifying technical glitches as she steamed towards her destiny. Her crew, fresh-faced and relatively inexperienced, had not yet had the chance to fully familiarize themselves with the intricacies of their powerful new warship. She was a diamond in the rough, a potent weapon still awaiting its final polish, and now she was being thrust into one of the most crucial naval engagements of the war. The objective for these 2 behemoths, under the command of Vice Admiral Lancelot Holland, was clear: intercept Bismarck and Prince Eugen before they could break free into the open Atlantic. The designated interception zone was the Denmark Strait, a treacherous, ice-strewn stretch of water between Greenland and Iceland. This narrow passage was one of the few viable routes for heavy warships seeking to slip past the Allied blockade. The geography of the strait, with its perpetually foul weather, fog, and icebergs, added another layer of complexity to an already high-stakes mission. The ships of the Royal Navy were steaming into a potential trap, a blind encounter in a brutal environment where the elements themselves could turn the tide of battle. As Hood and Prince of Wales steamed northwards, the crews grappled with a potent mix of anticipation and apprehension. On the mess decks, hushed conversations turned to the legends surrounding Bismarck, her reputation for invulnerability, her immense firepower. These men, hardened by years of naval service, understood the gravity of their mission. For many aboard Hood, this would be their first true taste of battle, a confrontation with an enemy designed to shatter their very sense of security. The weight of expectation, the burden of being Mighty Hood, pressed down on every soul aboard. They knew the world was watching, that the fate of Britain rested, in part, on their shoulders. Admiral Holland, a highly respected officer, understood the risks. He knew Hood's vulnerabilities, yet he also knew her symbolic power. He had chosen to lead from the front in the ship that had come to epitomize the Royal Navy. His plan was daring: close the range quickly, deny Bismarck the advantage of long-range plunging fire, and unleash Hood's devastating broadside at close quarters. It was a gamble, a calculated risk born of necessity and a deep understanding of naval combat. The icy spray lashed over the bows of the warships as they plowed through the turbulent waves, each knot gained bringing them closer to a confrontation that would forever alter the course of naval history. The stage was set, the players were moving, and the curtain was about to rise on a tragedy of monumental proportions. The first tangible threads of the mystery of the impending clash began to weave together on May 23rd. As Bismarck and Prince Eugen steamed through the Denmark Strait, shrouded in the biting cold and mist, they were not entirely alone. 2 British heavy cruisers, HMS Suffolk and HMS Norfolk, acting as the eyes and ears of the home fleet, were diligently patrolling the freezing waters. These cruisers, though outgunned by the German behemoths, were equipped with the nascent yet revolutionary technology of radar. It was a game changer, allowing them to detect enemy ships long before they could be seen by the human eye, especially in the poor visibility prevalent in the Strait. At precisely 7:22 p.m. on May 23rd, the ping of a radar contact shattered the relative calm aboard HMS Suffolk. The operator's heart must have hammered against his ribs as he relayed the information to the bridge. Two large vessels, bearing the unmistakable signature of powerful warships, were steaming southwest, exactly as intelligence had predicted. Commander Robert Ellis, Suffolk's commanding officer, wasted no time. He immediately altered course to shadow the enemy, maintaining a discreet but constant radar contact. A breathless message, encoded and dispatched with the utmost urgency, began its journey through the ether. Enemy in sight. The task of shadowing Bismarck and Prince Eugen was fraught with peril. The German ships were faster and immensely more powerful. If they chose to engage the cruisers, Suffolk and Norfolk would be utterly outmatched. Yet their mission was critical. Keep the enemy within radar range, continuously update the home fleet on their position, course, and speed, and avoid detection themselves. It was a nerve-wracking cat-and-mouse game played out across hundreds of miles of unforgiving ocean. The British cruisers, tiny specks in comparison to the German giants, bravely clung to the periphery, their crews peering through the gloom, their radars diligently scanning, their lives dependent on their ability to remain unseen. The weather conditions were atrocious. Gale-force winds whipped the sea into a frenzy, sending colossal waves crashing over the ship's bows. Visibility often dropped to mere hundreds of yards, making visual identification nearly impossible, and radar contacts intermittent and challenging to maintain. Icebergs, ghostly white specters, drifted menacingly in the mist, adding another layer of danger to the already treacherous environment. It was a testament to the skill and perseverance of the British crews that they managed to maintain contact through the night. The continuous updates from Suffolk and Norfolk were the lifeline that allowed Admiral Holland to plot his interception course with precision. As the night wore on, the tension aboard all ships was palpable. On Bismarck, Admiral Gunther Lütjens, the fleet commander, was well aware that his presence had been detected. The shadowing British cruisers were an irritant, a constant threat of revelation, but he knew they posed no direct threat. His focus remained on his primary objective, to break out into the Atlantic and begin his destructive campaign against Allied shipping. He maintained radio silence, a critical tactical discipline, to avoid betraying his position to the wider British intelligence network. The crew of Bismarck, though confident in their ship's invulnerability, were on high alert, their gun crews at readiness, their nerves taut with anticipation. On the British side, the urgency intensified. Admiral Holland, aboard Hood, drove his ships relentlessly through the heavy seas. The Prince of Wales, despite her newness and the ongoing work on board, struggled to keep pace, her engines pushed to their limits. Her crew, many still undergoing training, were experiencing the full, brutal reality of wartime sailing. The prospect of facing Bismarck, a ship already legendary, filled them with a mixture of fear and grim determination. They were sailing towards an unknown future, into a battle that would demand everything they had. The night of May 23rd blurred into the early hours of May 24th, a period of agonizing waiting and strategic maneuvering. The British cruisers, Suffolk and Norfolk, continued their dangerous dance with Bismarck and Prince Eugen, their radar pulses a constant, silent accusation in the darkness. Every ping, every update, brought the two colossal forces of the Royal Navy and the Kriegsmarine closer to their rendezvous. Admiral Holland calculated his approach, determined to engage Bismarck at first light. His plan hinged on speed and surprise, closing the distance quickly to minimize the risk of plunging fire that could penetrate Hood's vulnerable deck. He hoped to catch the Germans off guard, to use the element of surprise to his advantage. The stage was now set, the actors were in position, and the vast, cold waters of the Denmark Strait held its breath, awaiting the dawn and the inevitable clash. As the pre-dawn gloom of May 24, 1941, reluctantly began to yield to a pale Arctic twilight, the sea was a churning expanse of gray, capped with white foam. The air bit with a frigid dampness that seeped into bones, and the heavy swell of the North Atlantic made every ship a pendulum, swinging against the relentless motion of the waves. On the bridge of HMS Hood, Vice Admiral Lancelot Holland, a man renowned for his courage and tactical acumen, peered through his binoculars into the gloom. He was searching for the enemy, the elusive shadow that had haunted British naval strategy for days. The strain of the chase, the relentless pounding of the waves, and the immense responsibility weighed heavily on his shoulders.
At 5:37 a.m., a lookout aboard HMS Prince of Wales, a young seaman named Ted Briggs, his eyes raw from the constant watch, let out a cry that sliced through the cold morning air. "Enemy in sight, bearing green 30." Through the fading darkness, at a distance of approximately 17 miles, two distinct shapes began to materialize on the horizon. First, a faint smudge, then, as the distance closed, the unmistakable, menacing silhouettes of Bismarck and Prince Eugen. The German ships were steaming southeast, forming a classic line ahead, their impressive superstructures cutting starkly against the breaking dawn. The moment of truth had arrived. Admiral Holland made a critical tactical decision, one that would be debated by naval strategists for decades to come. He intended to close the range rapidly, aiming to engage Bismarck at under 10 miles. His reasoning was sound. At closer distances, the trajectory of incoming shells would be flatter, reducing the risk of plunging fire that could penetrate Hood's thinly armored decks. However, to achieve this, Hood and Prince of Wales had to approach the German ships almost head-on, along an angle that limited the number of guns they could bring to bear. Hood could only fire her forward turrets, meaning only 4 of her powerful 15-inch guns could engage, significantly reducing her initial firepower advantage. Bismarck and Prince Eugen, by contrast, presented their broadsides, meaning all their main guns were perfectly aligned to deliver a devastating barrage. The German ships, well-practiced and disciplined, identified their targets with chilling efficiency. Prince Eugen, leading the German line, initially targeted Prince of Wales. Bismarck, however, quickly recognized Hood, the mighty battlecruiser that represented the very heart of the Royal Navy, and locked onto her with unwavering precision. This was the clash everyone had feared, the Titans meeting head-on. At 5:52 a.m., a flash of orange fire erupted from the forward turrets of HMS Hood. The concussive blast reverberated across the water, and 2 massive shells arced into the sky, beginning their long trajectory towards the distant German ships. The battle had begun.
Prince of Wales followed suit moments later, her brand new guns adding their thunderous roar to the cacophony. On Bismarck, the order was given, and within moments, her 8 15-inch guns unleashed their own fury. 8 massive shells, each weighing over a ton, tore through the air, screaming towards the British ships. The shockwaves of their discharge sent tremors through the steel decks, a chilling declaration of war. The initial salvos, fired at extreme range, fell wide. Plumes of water erupted around the German ships as Hood's shells missed their mark. On Bismarck, the highly advanced fire control system, a testament to German engineering prowess, swiftly calculated corrections. The experienced gunnery crews adjusted their aim, their focus absolute. Prince Eugen, also displaying remarkable accuracy, quickly straddled Prince of Wales with her shells, a clear indication of her precision. Then came the first hits. A shell from Prince Eugen found its mark on Hood's boat deck, sparking a fierce fire among the ready-use ammunition and high-octane aviation fuel stored there. Smoke billowed from Hood's midsection, a grim herald of the damage being inflicted. Simultaneously, Bismarck's second salvo fell agonizingly close to Hood, sending colossal water plumes into the air. The British crews, exposed to the relentless pounding of the guns and the incoming fire, felt the ships shudder and vibrate with terrifying intensity. At 5:56 a.m., Admiral Holland, recognizing the danger of his approach angle and the limited firepower it afforded, gave the order, "Hard a port together." This maneuver was designed to bring all of Hood's and Prince of Wales guns to bear, to present their full broadsides and unleash their maximum firepower. But before the maneuver could be completed, before Hood could swing fully around, disaster struck. Bismarck's fifth salvo. It was a perfectly executed barrage, a terrifying testament to German gunnery. 4 shells, fired with devastating accuracy, screamed towards Hood. One of them, a 15-inch armor-piercing projectile, struck the battlecruiser square amidships, likely penetrating her thinly armored deck near the main mast. The effect was instantaneous and cataclysmic. A colossal geyser of flame and smoke erupted from Hood's midsection, reaching hundreds of feet into the sky. It was an explosion of unimaginable power, a horrifying spectacle that dwarfed even the thunder of the guns. Eyewitnesses aboard Prince of Wales watched in stunned horror as Hood's bow rose sharply out of the water, her stern already beginning to plunge. The ship broke in two between the mainmast and the aft funnels, the immense forces tearing her apart with sickening speed. The explosion, almost certainly a catastrophic ignition of her aft ammunition magazines, sealed her fate in a single, devastating moment. In less than 6 minutes from the first shot fired, HMS Hood, the pride of the Royal Navy, the symbol of British naval power, was gone. She vanished beneath the waves at 6 a.m., taking with her 1,415 officers and men. Out of that vast crew, only 3 survivors were pulled from the freezing waters hours later.
The loss was unfathomable, a blow to British morale that resonated across the globe. The speed and totality of Hood's destruction sent shockwaves through the Royal Navy. The unassailable seemed, in that moment, utterly vulnerable. Prince of Wales, now alone and facing the combined might of Bismarck and Prince Eugen, found herself in a desperate situation. She had already sustained several hits from both German ships, her bridge damaged, and her new guns suffering from mechanical failures. Her commanding officer, Captain Leach, recognizing the futility of continuing the unequal fight, made the agonizing decision to turn away, laying down a smokescreen to cover his retreat. Bismarck, herself, having taken a hit from Prince of Wales that caused an oil leak and damaged a boiler room, had achieved a stunning victory. The mightiest ship in the British fleet had been destroyed, and the Atlantic remained open for the German raider. But the triumph was short-lived. The sinking of the Hood, far from ending the pursuit, ignited a furious, vengeful determination in the Royal Navy. The hunt for Bismarck had now truly begun, with an intensity born of grief and a thirst for retribution. The news of HMS Hood's destruction sent a shockwave of grief and fury through the British Admiralty and the nation itself.
The sinking of the mighty Hood, the symbol of British naval power, was an unimaginable blow, a humiliation that demanded immediate and unequivocal retribution. Prime Minister Winston Churchill, upon hearing the devastating reports, issued a terse, unyielding command that echoed across the globe: "Sink the Bismarck." This was not merely an order, it was a rallying cry, a declaration of intent that mobilized every available British naval and air asset in the North Atlantic. For Admiral Tovey, commander of the Home Fleet, the task was now intensely personal. The loss of Hood, a ship he knew intimately and respected deeply, fueled his determination. He had been steaming towards the Denmark Strait with HMS King George V and HMS Repulse, desperately hoping to join the fray. Now, his mission was clear: avenge the Hood and eliminate the Bismarck. The pursuit that followed would become one of the most epic and dramatic chases in naval history, a testament to endurance, skill, and the brutal realities of naval warfare. After the short, brutal engagement in the Denmark Strait, Bismarck, though victorious, was not unscathed. A critical hit from HMS Prince of Wales had penetrated her bow, causing a significant oil leak and contaminating a fuel bunker. This damage, though not immediately life-threatening, was strategically catastrophic. It severely reduced her effective fuel range, forcing Admiral Lütjens to abandon his original mission of commerce raiding in the Atlantic. Instead, he made the agonizing decision to break off from Prinz Eugen, which was tasked to continue the raiding mission, and set a course for the relative safety of a French port, specifically Saint-Nazaire, where Bismarck could undergo repairs in its massive dry dock. The pursuit became a desperate game of cat and mouse across the vast, tumultuous expanse of the North Atlantic. The British cruisers, Suffolk and Norfolk, despite their inferior firepower, clung tenaciously to Bismarck's heels, maintaining constant radar contact whenever possible. They were the eyes of the Royal Navy, relaying Bismarck's position, course, and speed to Admiral Tovey and the converging forces. The weather remained atrocious, with gale-force winds and heavy seas, making shadowing a perilous endeavor. Visibility was often poor, and the threat of Bismarck turning on her pursuers was ever present. The Royal Navy threw everything they had into the hunt. From Scapa Flow, Gibraltar, and even distant Freetown, ships were diverted, U-boat patrols were reinforced, and air recognition intensified. The battleship HMS Rodney, a powerful vessel with 9 16-inch guns, was detached from convoy escort duty and joined the chase. HMS Ramillies, another battleship, also converged. The aircraft carrier HMS Victorious launched a desperate, long-range torpedo bomber attack by 9 antiquated Fairey Swordfish biplanes against horrendous odds. These slow, fabric-winged planes, flying into the teeth of Bismarck's formidable anti-aircraft defenses in a raging storm, embodied a suicidal courage. One torpedo found its mark, but its impact on Bismarck's armored belt was minimal, serving only to further enrage the German beast. Despite the relentless efforts of the British, Bismarck, under cover of worsening weather and executing a brilliant evasive maneuver, managed to shake off her pursuers. For agonizing hours, the radar screen on HMS Suffolk went blank. The unthinkable had happened. Bismarck had vanished. The news sent a wave of despair through the Admiralty. The most powerful German warship, having just sunk the pride of the Royal Navy, was now loose in the Atlantic, her whereabouts unknown.
The possibility of her escaping to France, being repaired, and then returning to wreak havoc was a nightmare scenario. The hunt for Bismarck had just become a frantic, desperate search. The loss of contact triggered a massive global mobilization of British resources. Patrol aircraft scoured hundreds of square miles of ocean, ships fanned out across suspected escape routes, and radio intelligence worked around the clock, desperately trying to pinpoint the elusive German battleship. The mystery of Bismarck's whereabouts became the sole, overriding focus of the Allied war effort. Every hour that passed without a sighting increased the anxiety, raising the stakes exponentially. The vastness of the ocean, typically an ally to the hunter, now seemed to conspire with the hunted, swallowing Bismarck whole.
The breakthrough came from the unlikeliest of sources, a Royal Air Force Catalina flying boat. On May 26th at 10:30 a.m., after 31 agonizing hours of uncertainty, the pilot, Squadron Leader Dennis Briggs, spotted Bismarck. She was steaming south-southeast, just as British intelligence had predicted she might, heading directly for the French coast. The signal from the Catalina, Bismarck sighted, was the most welcome news the Admiralty had received in days. The chase was back on, but time was running out. Bismarck was now within range of German U-boats and land-based air cover from France. The window to intercept her was rapidly closing. The nearest powerful British force capable of intercepting Bismarck was Force H, based in Gibraltar, comprising the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal, the battlecruiser HMS Renown, and the cruiser HMS Sheffield. Admiral Sir James Somerville, commanding Force H, knew that Ark Royal's Swordfish torpedo bombers represented the last best hope of crippling Bismarck before she reached safety. The stage was set for a final, desperate gamble, a dramatic climax to an already epic pursuit. The relentless pursuit of Bismarck was about to enter its most perilous and decisive phase, a showdown that would determine not only the fate of a ship, but the trajectory of the war at sea. With Bismarck relocated, the Royal Navy converged, but the crucial factor remained time. Bismarck was steaming relentlessly towards the French coast, where she would be safe under the protective umbrella of the Luftwaffe and a formidable U-boat screen. The window to intercept her was narrowing with every passing hour. Admiral Somerville, commanding Force H from HMS Ark Royal, understood the immense pressure. His Swordfish torpedo bombers, those slow, biplane relics of a bygone era, were the only force capable of delivering a knockout blow before the battleships of the home fleet could close the distance. On the afternoon of May 26th, Ark Royal launched her first strike of 15 Swordfish. The weather, still treacherous, was a major impediment. Visibility was poor, and squalls frequently swept across the ocean, making spotting and targeting incredibly difficult. Adding to the chaos, the pilots tragically misidentified the British cruiser HMS Sheffield, a ship that was shadowing Bismarck, and launched torpedoes at her. Fortunately, Sheffield's quick maneuvering and the faulty detonators of the torpedoes prevented any hits. The harrowing mistake underscored the brutal conditions and the immense stress on the air crews. Despite the setback and the near-friendly fire incident, Somerville was undeterred. The fate of the entire operation hinged on Ark Royal's aircraft. At 7:10 p.m., a second, more cautious strike of 15 Swordfish took off from Ark Royal's pitching deck. This time, the pilots were painstakingly briefed on the precise recognition of Bismarck and the consequences of another error. As they approached Bismarck through the twilight gloom and the churning sea, they were met by a ferocious barrage of anti-aircraft fire. Bismarck, her crew exhausted but defiant, unleashed every gun she possessed, from her formidable 15-inch main battery firing air-bursting shells to her rapid-fire 20mm cannons. The sky above her became a deadly maelstrom of tracers and exploding flak. Yet, these string bags, as the Swordfish were affectionately known, pressed on with astonishing bravery. Flying at low altitudes, their slow speed, ironically, made them difficult targets for Bismarck's modern anti-aircraft guns, which were optimized for faster, higher-flying aircraft. They weaved and dodged through the hail of fire, each pilot and observer acutely aware of the suicidal nature of their mission. Their torpedoes, the tin fish as they were called, were their only weapons, and they had to be launched with precision to have any hope of hitting Bismarck's heavily armored hull. Against all odds and through a storm of steel, several torpedoes found their mark. One struck Bismarck amidships, causing localized flooding but no critical damage to her main armor belt. However, the most crucial hit came from a torpedo that slammed into her stern. The explosion jammed Bismarck's two massive rudders, fixing them in a port-side turn. The German giant was suddenly, terrifyingly crippled. She was no longer able to steer a straight course. Instead, she began to steam in broad circles, a monumental, beautiful ship suddenly reduced to a helpless, spinning target. The news of the rudder damage, relayed back to Ark Royal and then to the converging British forces, was met with a mixture of elation and grim satisfaction. This was the decisive blow, the moment that had shifted the balance. Bismarck, the predator, was now the prey, mortally wounded and unable to escape. Her speed and formidable guns were useless if she could not direct them. The pursuit, which had stretched across thousands of miles of ocean and cost the Royal Navy its most iconic ship, was finally reaching its dramatic, inevitable conclusion. Through the long night of May 26th into May 27th, Bismarck fought a valiant yet ultimately futile battle for survival. Her crew, under the command of Captain Ernst Lindemann, worked tirelessly to free the jammed rudders, to no avail. The ship continued to steam in circles, a magnificent, defiant, but trapped beast. British destroyers, led by Captain Philip Vian's HMS Cossack, bravely harried Bismarck throughout the night, launching intermittent torpedo attacks and shadowing her closely, preventing any possibility of escape or the intervention of German U-boats, which were now closing in. The destroyers themselves endured a terrifying ordeal, braving heavy seas and Bismarck's powerful main guns, which occasionally illuminated the night with their flashes as they fired indiscriminately into the darkness. As dawn broke on May 27, 1941, the final act of the Bismarck saga began. The main force of the home fleet, consisting of the battleships HMS King George V and HMS Rodney, accompanied by the heavy cruisers HMS Norfolk and HMS Dorsetshire, finally arrived on the scene. The sight of these formidable British warships, arrayed for battle, must have been a chilling spectacle for the exhausted, desperate crew of Bismarck. The weather had remarkably cleared, offering perfect visibility for the impending engagement. The sea was still rough, but the light was clear, revealing the full horror of what was about to unfold. At 8:47 a.m., HMS Rodney, her 9 powerful 16-inch guns a terrifying declaration of intent, opened fire at a range of approximately 12 miles. Moments later, HMS King George V, with her 10 14-inch guns, joined the devastating symphony of destruction. Bismarck, though crippled, responded with every gun she could bring to bear. The sea around the ships erupted in colossal geysers of water as shells from both sides plunged into the ocean. The noise was deafening, a visceral roar of steel, fire, and explosions that reverberated across the waves. The battle was, from the outset, an incredibly unequal contest. Bismarck, unable to maneuver effectively, struggled to bring her guns to bear on the fast-moving British battleships. Rodney, a ship designed for short-range combat with an all-forward main battery, closed to an astonishingly close range, pouring shell after shell into the German battleship. King George V, though slightly further away, also delivered a relentless barrage. The precise, devastating fire of the Royal Navy ships quickly began to tell. Within minutes, Bismarck's forward turrets, Anton and Bruno, were knocked out, engulfed in flames, or jammed. Soon after, her aft turrets, Caesar and Dora, also fell silent. The fire control systems were destroyed, the bridge obliterated, and the mainmast shot away. Bismarck became a blazing hulk, her once proud superstructure a mangled ruin of twisted steel and raging infernos. Yet, she refused to sink. Her incredibly robust construction, the very armor that had made her so formidable, now prolonged her agony, absorbing hundreds of direct hits without giving way. For nearly 2 hours, the British battleships pounded Bismarck relentlessly. Shells from Rodney's monstrous 16-inch guns ripped through her armor, exploding deep within her hull. King George V's 14-inch shells added to the devastation, tearing apart her upper works. The heavy cruisers Norfolk and Dorsetshire also contributed to the relentless bombardment, launching salvo after salvo. The scene was one of apocalyptic destruction, a testament to the raw, unbridled power of naval warfare. Smoke and steam billowed from the German battleship, mixed with the acrid smell of burnt cordite and the screams of twisting metal. By 10:15 a.m., Bismarck was a wreck, burning fiercely from stem to stern. Her main guns were silent, her engines likely stopped, and her crew, many of them trapped in the inferno below decks, had suffered catastrophic casualties. Still, she remained afloat. Concerned about the increasing U-boat threat and running low on fuel, Admiral Tovey ordered his battleships to break off the engagement. He instructed the cruisers to finish her off with torpedoes. HMS Dorsetshire, with grim determination, closed in and fired 3 torpedoes into Bismarck's hull. 2 of them struck home. Simultaneously, many of the remaining German crew, realizing the battle was lost and preferring to scuttle their ship rather than allow her to be captured, initiated scuttling charges. Whether it was the British torpedoes or the German scuttling charges that delivered the final fatal blow remains a subject of historical debate, but the outcome was certain. At 10:40 a.m. on May 27, 1941, the German battleship Bismarck, after a final desperate struggle, began to list heavily to port. Slowly, majestically, she rolled over, her keel rising into the air, a final defiant farewell before she disappeared beneath the waves. The mighty Bismarck, once hailed as unsinkable, had been vanquished, sinking to a depth of nearly 3 miles. Of her crew of over 2,200 men, only 114 were rescued from the icy waters by the British ships. The rest perished, consumed by the battle or succumbing to the brutal cold of the North Atlantic. The silence that followed her disappearance was profound, a chilling testament to the scale of the destruction and the immense human cost. The hunt was over, the revenge complete, but the tragedy of the losses on both sides resonated deeply in the hearts of all who witnessed it. The sinking of the Bismarck marked a turning point, a pivotal moment that sent ripples across the strategic landscape of World War II and forever altered the nature of naval warfare. While the immediate objective was achieved, the elimination of a grave threat to Allied shipping, the legacy of the Battle of the Denmark Strait extended far beyond the immediate tactical victory. It was a profound illustration of shifting power dynamics, a testament to technological evolution, and a poignant reminder of the human cost of conflict. Strategically, the demise of Bismarck had an immense psychological impact. For the German Kriegsmarine, it was a devastating blow, effectively signaling the end of their large-scale surface raider operations in the Atlantic. The dream of unleashing a fleet of powerful battleships to disrupt Allied convoys, a strategy that had threatened to cripple Britain, was largely abandoned. German naval strategy increasingly shifted towards the U-boat campaign, a relentless war of attrition waged beneath the waves, recognizing the immense risks involved in deploying valuable surface assets against the overwhelming strength of the Royal Navy. For the British, the sinking was an enormous morale boost, a vital affirmation of their naval supremacy after the devastating loss of the Hood. It demonstrated that even the most formidable enemy battleship could be hunted down and destroyed, bolstering confidence in the face of relentless German aggression. Technologically, the battle provided crucial insights and underscored emerging trends in naval warfare. The critical role of radar, particularly in the initial detection and shadowing phases, was undeniably highlighted. HMS Suffolk and Norfolk's ability to maintain contact with Bismarck in adverse conditions, often beyond visual range, proved the immense value of this nascent technology. It signaled a new era where ships could see through fog and darkness, forever changing reconnaissance and engagement tactics. Equally significant was the decisive role played by carrier-based air power. The antiquated ferry Swordfish, slow and vulnerable, delivered the crucial blow that crippled Bismarck, jamming her rudders and setting the stage for her destruction. This audacious attack against a ship bristling with anti-aircraft defenses provided a stark demonstration of the offensive potential of naval aviation, foreshadowing the eventual dominance of aircraft carriers over battleships as the primary capital ships of the future. The era of the undisputed battleship was drawing to a close, supplanted by the reach and flexibility of carrier air groups. The human stories embedded within the Battle of the Denmark Strait are perhaps its most enduring legacy. The gallantry of the British crews, relentlessly pursuing a superior foe, the suicidal bravery of the Swordfish pilots, pressing home their attacks through a storm of flak, and the stoic defiance of Bismarck's crew, fighting to the last against overwhelming odds, these are tales of courage and sacrifice that transcend national allegiances. The sheer tragedy of HMS Hood, sinking with the loss of 1,415 souls in a matter of minutes, remains one of the greatest maritime disasters in history, a poignant reminder of the vulnerability of even the most powerful warships and the immense human toll of war. The fate of Bismarck's crew, with only a fraction rescued from the freezing Atlantic, adds another layer of sorrow to the narrative. Today, the wrecks of both HMS Hood and the German battleship Bismarck lie deep on the ocean floor, silent monuments to a ferocious clash. Discovered decades after their sinking, these underwater sites offer archaeologists and historians invaluable insights into the events of that fateful encounter. The Hood's shattered hull, split apart by the catastrophic magazine explosion, confirms the theories regarding her fatal design flaw. Bismarck, largely intact despite the hundreds of hits, resting upright, reveals the incredible strength of her construction, even in defeat. These underwater graves are hallowed ground, a testament to the power of human ingenuity and the destructive force of conflict. The Battle of the Denmark Strait remains one of the most studied encounters in maritime history precisely because it encapsulates so many crucial aspects of naval warfare: strategy, technology, human courage, and tragic loss.
It was a microcosm of the larger war at sea, a dramatic narrative that had a tangible impact on the course of the conflict. It taught invaluable lessons about ship design, fleet coordination, and the evolving role of air power. For students of history and World War II enthusiasts, it offers a compelling, multifaceted study in naval combat, demonstrating how a single encounter, a mere 183 minutes from the first shot to the final plunge, could indeed change the course of the war at sea. The mystery of what might have been had Bismarck escaped adds a chilling what-if to its enduring allure, ensuring that the legendary clash between the Bismarck and the Hood will forever be etched in the annals of maritime history.